For 7 years, Captain Adrian Cole had served Commander Elena Voss. He had followed her through frozen passes, burning villages, and battles no sane officer would have entered willingly. She never hesitated, never raised her voice, and never showed fear. The soldiers called her the Ice Commander. Adrian knew better. He had seen her spend an entire night beside a wounded recruit. He had seen her secretly send half her salary to the families of fallen soldiers. He had seen her hands tremble once after nearly losing him in battle. That was why leading her felt harder than facing any enemy. At dawn, Adrian placed his retirement request on her desk. Elena read the first line and spoke. "Still. You want to leave? The war is over." That is not an answer. "I have served for 7 years, and you are still my best officer." Adrian looked at the maps covering her office walls. "I want a different life." Elena's fingers tightened around the paper. "What kind? A quiet house? A garden? A family?" Her expression did not change, but her voice became colder. "A wife? Yes." "Who?" "No one yet." For one brief second, relief crossed her face. Then it vanished. "You plan to retire first and search for someone afterward?" That was the idea. Elena leaned back in her chair. "What kind of woman?" Adrian almost smiled. "Is this part of the retirement review? I need to know whether your reason is sensible." He thought for a moment. "Someone honest, strong, someone I can trust." "You trust many people, not with my life." The room became quiet. Adrian continued. "Someone who understands why I wake before dawn. Someone who won't ask me to forget the war. Someone who knows why I need silence." Elena looked down at the form. "And love. That would be useful." "Useful? I have little experience." "You received dozens of letters during the war from women who read your name in newspapers." "You never answered." "No." "Why?" "Because none of them were you." Adrian swallowed the truth. "I was busy serving." Elena's gaze hardened. "And now you are finished serving me." "I didn't say that." "You are asking to leave." "I am asking to retire." "What is the difference?" Adrian stepped closer to her desk. "Leaving the army does not mean forgetting you." Her eyes lifted to his. For 7 years, they had understood each other through silence. Now Adrian could not read her at all. Elena looked away first. "When do you plan to leave?" "The southern train departs in 3 days." "You already bought a ticket?" "Yes." "Before I approve this, I expected resistance." "From the army? From you?" Something flashed across her face. "Hurt." Then it was gone. "Return at noon," she said. Adrian saluted. At the door, Elena called his name, not his rank. "Adrian," he turned. "If I refuse," she asked. "Will you resent me?" He answered honestly. "Yes." Her expression changed slightly. He left before either of them could say more. At noon, Adrian returned. General Marcus Vale stood beside Elena's desk. Vale was powerful, wealthy, and favored by the High Council. For years, rumors had claimed he would marry Elena. Adrian hated those rumors more than he had ever admitted. Vale glanced at the retirement form. "So it is true. You are leaving. If my commander approves." Elena sat behind the desk with a silver pen in her hand. Her face was calm again. "Your request has been reviewed." Adrian waited. She signed the bottom of the page. Then she wrote another sentence beneath her name. Her pen pressed so hard it nearly tore the paper. She slid the form across the desk. Adrian picked it up. The first word was clear. "Approved." Relief came first. Then he read the line beneath it. "Approved, but you're marrying me." Adrian stared at the page. Elena stepped forward. "What did you write?" She ignored him. For the first time in 7 years, the Ice Commander looked nervous. Only slightly. Only around the eyes. But Adrian saw it. "You said you wanted retirement, a house, and a wife." She said, "I approve the retirement." "And the wife?" "I am volunteering." Vale's face darkened. "This is inappropriate." Elena still did not look at him. Adrian's heartbeat thundered. "You cannot order me to marry you." "I know." "Then what is this?" "The answer I should have given years ago." She rose and walked around the desk. "I trusted you with my army, my life, and every decision that mattered. Every time I entered a battlefield, I looked for you first. Her voice softened. I will not watch you leave and give everything I wanted to a stranger. Adrian could barely breathe. You wanted me? Elena's composure finally cracked after 7 years. Then why did you never say anything? Because you never tried to leave. Vale placed a sealed document on the desk. That changes nothing. Elena turned cold again. What is that? An order from the High Council. Vale broke the seal. For political stability, Commander Elena Voss must marry before the month ends. Adrian's fingers tightened around the retirement form. Elena's eyes narrowed. Who did they choose? Vale looked directly at Adrian. Me. Silence filled the room. Then Adrian folded the paper and placed it inside his coat. Vale smiled. You are retired now, Captain. This no longer concerns you. Adrian stepped beside Elena. On the contrary, he looked at the woman who had just chosen him after 7 years of silence. It concerns the woman I'm going to marry. General Vale laughed. Not loudly, just enough to make Adrian want to hit him. You are retired, Vale said. You no longer have rank, authority, or a place in this decision. Adrian remained beside Elena. I don't need rank to refuse on her behalf. Elena turned her head. I can refuse for myself. I know. Then why are you still speaking? Because you asked me to marry you. A faint color touched her cheeks. Vale noticed. His smile disappeared. This is not a romantic choice, he said. The Northern Command needs political protection. The Council needs unity. Elena's voice became cold. The Council wants control. It wants stability through your family. My family controls the southern supply routes. Your army controls the north. Our marriage ends the conflict between both factions. Adrian looked at Elena. Is he telling the truth? She did not answer immediately. That was enough. Vale continued. If she refuses, the Council will divide her command and remove half her authority. Adrian's expression hardened. So this is a threat. It is politics. To men like you, those are the same thing. Vale stepped closer. You served her well, Captain. Leave with dignity. Adrian took the retirement form from his coat, then tore it in half. Elena stared at him. What are you doing? Changing my plans. You asked to leave. I asked because I thought you didn't need me anymore. Her eyes flashed. I never said that. You never said anything. The words struck harder than he intended. For 7 years, Adrian had waited for one sign, one reason to hope. Elena had hidden everything behind orders and silence. Now she had finally chosen him, and the Council expected him to walk away. He turned to Vale. When is the Council meeting? Tomorrow. Good. Vale frowned. Why? Because Elena will reject the marriage. Elena crossed her arms. And you have already decided that? No. Adrian looked at her. You did. The room grew quiet. Elena held his gaze. Then she faced Vale. Tell the Council I refuse. Vale's face changed. If you do this, they will remove you. Then they will try. They will succeed. Adrian stepped forward. Not if she gives them another alliance. Vale laughed again. With whom? With me? Even Elena looked surprised. Vale stared at Adrian. You have no title. I have the loyalty of the 7th Division. That is not an alliance. I have the support of every border town. Elena defended. Still not enough. Adrian moved closer. And I have evidence that your family has been selling military supplies at triple price during wartime. Vale's expression froze. Elena looked sharply at Adrian. You never told me. I found the records 2 months ago. Why keep them? I was still confirming the signatures. Vale's calm finally broke. This is blackmail. No. Adrian said, it is insurance. Vale took a step toward him. Elena moved between them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. You will not threaten him in my office. Vale looked at her. You would risk your command for a retired captain. Elena did not hesitate. I would risk it for the man who kept me alive long enough to have one. Vale's jaw tightened. He picked up the Council order. This will not end well. Adrian smiled without warmth. For you, perhaps. Vale laughed. The door slammed behind him. For several seconds, neither Adrian nor Elena spoke. Then she turned. You tore up your retirement request. Yes. You wanted a quiet life. I still do. You wanted a house. Yes, a garden. Yes. And a wife. Adrian stepped closer. I found one. Elena's composure cracked only slightly, but enough. You haven't answered me properly. I thought standing beside you while threatening a general was clear. It was not. She folded her arms, though Adrian noticed her hands were trembling. You asked me in writing, he said. I did. Then I'll answer clearly. He reached into his coat and removed the torn pieces of the retirement request. On the blank back, he wrote one word. Approved. Then beneath it, but only if you marry me willingly, not as my commander. Elena read the line. Her expression softened. As Elena. As Elena. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she took the pen and signed beneath his words. Adrian smiled. So that's a yes. It is an official signature. That wasn't my question. She stepped closer. Yes. The answer was quiet, but Adrian had waited 7 years to hear it. He lifted one hand and touched her face. Elena went still. They had bandaged each other's wounds, shared tents during winter campaigns, and slept back to back in enemy territory. Yet this was the closest they had ever stood without war between them. May I? He asked. Her eyes lowered to his mouth. You are retired. You no longer need permission. Adrian kissed her. At first, Elena remained perfectly still. Then her hand caught the front of his uniform and pulled him closer. The ice commander kissed like she fought without retreat. When they finally separated, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. You should have done that years ago. So should you. I was afraid. Elena looked surprised. Of me, of losing you. Her expression changed. You nearly died 6 times. 7. That is not better. I thought confessing might be more dangerous. For the first time, Elena laughed. It was soft and brief. Adrian had heard victory horns that moved him less. A knock sounded at the door. Her aide entered, pale and breathless. Commander, the council has issued a second order. Elena took the document. Her eyes hardened as she read. What is it? Adrian asked. She handed it to him. By sunrise, Elena was to surrender command of the Northern Army. Until then, she was confined to headquarters. Adrian looked toward the window. Outside, soldiers were already gathering in the courtyard. Elena's soldiers. Their soldiers. A deep horn sounded from the front gate. Her aide swallowed. General Vale has arrived with the Royal Guard. Adrian folded the order. What happens if Elena refuses to surrender? The aide looked frightened. It will be considered treason. Elena reached for her sword. Adrian stopped her hand. No. Her eyes turned cold. You expect me to surrender? No. He looked toward the courtyard where thousands of soldiers waited for the commander they had followed through war. I expect you to let them choose. By sunrise, the courtyard was filled with soldiers. The 7th Division stood in silent ranks beneath the gray morning sky. Many had fought beside Elena for years. Some still carried scars from battles she had led them through. At the front gate, General Vale waited with 200 royal guards. He held the council order in one hand. Elena Vos, he called, surrender your command. Elena stepped onto the headquarters balcony. Adrian stood beside her. A murmur moved through the soldiers below. Vale looked at Adrian. The retired captain has no place here. Adrian unfolded the torn retirement request. I changed my mind. You cannot withdraw and approve retirement without council permission. Then consider me a civilian with a strong opinion. A few soldiers smiled. Vale did not. Elena, this is your final warning. Step down or every soldier who follows you will be charged with treason. The courtyard became tense. Adrian looked at Elena. She had faced armies without fear. But now thousands of lives depended on her choice. If I order them to resist, she said quietly. They will. I know. They could die. I know. And if I surrender, Vale takes the north. Adrian studied the soldiers below. Then don't order them. Elena turned to him. What? Let them decide. That is not how command works. No, but this is no longer a military order. Adrian stepped to the edge of the balcony. His voice carried across the courtyard. Soldiers of the 7th Division. Every face turned toward him. The council says Commander Voss is unfit to lead because she refused a political marriage. Angry whispers spread through the ranks. They say your loyalty belongs to a seal on a piece of paper. Vale shouted, Captain, stop. Adrian ignored him. For 7 years, Commander Voss stood at the front of every battle. She ate what you ate, bled where you bled, and never ordered anyone into danger she would not face herself. The soldiers remained silent, but their hands tightened around their weapons. Today she will not command you to fight for her. Adrian looked down at them. You must choose. Vale raised his hand. Royal guards moved toward the gate. Arrest him. Before they could advance, one soldier stepped out of formation. Sergeant Tomas Reed. He removed the council insignia from his shoulder and dropped it into the mud. I choose Commander Voss. Another soldier stepped forward. Then another. Within seconds, metal insignias began striking the ground across the courtyard. Hundreds, then thousands. I choose Commander Voss. The shout rose from every rank. Vale's face went pale. The royal guards hesitated. They were badly outnumbered. Elena stared down at her army. For the first time, Adrian saw tears in her eyes. She blinked them away before anyone else could notice. Vale pointed toward the gate. This is rebellion. No, Adrian said. This is your answer. Vale looked at his guards. Take the headquarters. Not one man moved. Their captain lowered his sword. With respect, General, we were ordered to secure a peaceful transfer. Vale's voice sharpened. I am giving you a new order. They refused to begin a civil war. Vale turned furious. Elena descended from the balcony. Adrian followed her into the courtyard. The soldiers opened a path. She stopped before Vale. You came here expecting me to surrender. I came here with the authority of the council. You came with 200 guards to threaten 10,000 soldiers. Vale lowered his voice. You cannot win against the entire capital. I don't need to. Adrian handed Elena the supply records he had hidden beneath his coat. She looked at the signatures. Vale's family seal appeared on every page. These prove your family stole from the army during wartime, Adrian said. Vale's confidence disappeared. You cannot prove where those came from. Elena held up the final page. The quartermaster who signed this is still alive. Adrian nodded toward the gate. An older officer entered under guard. Vale stared at him. You said he was dead. He nearly was. Adrian replied, your men made that mistake. The quartermaster bowed to Elena. I will testify before the council. The soldiers began murmuring again. Vale stepped backward. You planned this? Adrian looked at Elena. No, I planned to retire. Elena almost smiled. Vale was arrested before noon. By evening, messages had reached the capital from every northern province. Governors, merchants, and military leaders demanded an investigation into his family. The council could no longer remove Elena without risking open revolt. But the victory came with a price. That night, Elena stood alone in the war room. Adrian found her staring at the map. You won, he said. No, you kept your command. I nearly divided the country. You gave the soldiers a choice and they chose me. That frightens you. She turned. They would have fought. Yes, they would have died. Not because you ordered them to, because they believed in you. Elena looked exhausted. For 7 years, she had carried the weight of every soldier under her command. Adrian stepped closer. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. Her eyes moved to his. You are retired. Apparently, I'm bad at retirement. You tore up the form. I can submit another. Her expression cooled. You still want to leave? I still want the house. And the garden? Yes. And the wife? He smiled. Especially the wife. Elena's shoulders relaxed. Adrian took her hand. This army does not need us forever. Not yet. No, not yet. She looked down at their joined hands. And when the north is stable, we leave together. Elena was silent for a moment. Then she nodded. Together. A knock interrupted them. The council messenger entered and bowed. Commander, the capital has issued a summons. Elena took the letter. Her expression changed as she read. Adrian looked over her shoulder. The High Council had withdrawn Vale's marriage order, but in its place was a new condition. Elena could remain commander only if she married a politically acceptable husband before the Winter Council. Adrian read the final line twice. His name was not on the approved list. Elena folded the letter. They still intend to choose for me. Adrian took it from her hand and placed it over a candle. The edge caught fire. Elena watched the council order turn to ash. What are you doing? Adrian looked at her. Preparing for our wedding. Her eyes widened. The council forbids it. Then we give them a marriage they cannot undo. How? Adrian smiled. By marrying before they arrive. Adrian gave them 6 hours. By midnight the headquarters chapel was lit. By 1, soldiers had found flowers from the officer's garden, white cloth from the infirmary, and enough candles to make the old stone walls glow. By 2, the chaplain had been awakened, dressed, and informed that he would perform the most politically dangerous wedding in the kingdom. He looked at Adrian. Do you understand what you are asking? Yes. You intend to marry Commander Voss without council approval? Yes. Before sunrise? Yes. The chaplain sighed. I preferred you when you only disobeyed battlefield orders. Adrian almost smiled. So, will you do it? The chaplain looked toward the chapel doors. Elena stood there in uniform. No gown, no jewels. Her sword hung at her side, and her hair was still tied as if she might be summoned to battle at any moment, but her eyes were fixed on Adrian. I will, the chaplain said. Elena approached. You arranged all this without asking me. You told me they would keep choosing for you. That is not permission. Adrian stepped closer, then tell me to stop. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Around them, officers pretended not to listen. Sergeant Reed suddenly became very interested in a candle. Adrian lowered his voice. I will not marry you because the council demands a husband. I know. I will not marry you because it protects your command. I know. I will marry you because every future I imagine after the war felt empty until you wrote your name into it. Elena's expression softened. That was not exactly what I wrote. It was close. You are altering official documents again. You tore up my retirement plan. You tore it first. A few soldiers laughed. Elena glanced toward them. The chapel became silent instantly. Then she looked back at Adrian. If we do this, there is no quiet escape afterward. I stopped wanting an easy life the moment I realized it would not include you. Her eyes shone in the candle light. Then ask properly. Adrian took her hands. For 7 years those hands had held swords, maps, and the lives of thousands. Now they trembled in his. Elena Voss, will you marry me before the council arrives, after it leaves, and every day after that? She held his gaze. Yes. The answer moved through the chapel like warmth. The chaplain cleared his throat. Then perhaps we should begin before another army appears. The ceremony was simple. No noble witnesses, no royal banners, only soldiers who had followed them through war. Adrian promised to stand beside her without standing in her shadow. Elena promised to choose him even when duty demanded everything else. When the chaplain asked for the rings, silence followed. Adrian looked at Elena. You planned a secret wedding without rings? She asked. I had 6 hours. That is poor preparation. Sergeant Reed stepped forward. He removed a plain silver band from a chain around his neck. My wife gave me this before the Eastern campaign. She would want it used. Another officer offered a second ring. It had belonged to his brother who had died under Elena's command. The chapel became quiet. Elena accepted both rings carefully. These carry too much meaning. That is why they are right, Adrian said. He placed the first ring on her finger. She placed the second on his. The chaplain smiled. By the authority granted to me limited though it may soon become, I declare you husband and wife. The soldiers cheered. Adrian kissed Elena beneath the old military banners. This time she did not hesitate. For 1 perfect minute there was no council, no command, no war, only them. Then the chapel doors opened. A messenger stood outside breathless. The council delegation has entered the northern district. Elena's expression turned cold again. How many? 30 officials, 4 royal judges and 500 guards. Adrian looked toward the windows. Dawn was beginning to color the sky. They arrived early. They always do when they expect obedience, Elena said. She turned to the chaplain. Is the marriage recorded? He held up the signed registry. Legally witnessed and sealed. Adrian took Elena's hand. Then they are too late. The council arrived just after sunrise. Their leader, Lord Chancellor Rowan, entered the war hall without removing his gloves. He was an older man with silver hair and the expression of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Elena and Adrian waited beside the command table. Rowan placed the approved husband list before her. You were ordered to select one of these men. Elena did not look at it. I selected my husband. Rowan's gaze moved to Adrian. A retired officer is not politically acceptable. He was acceptable enough to save the Northern Command. That is irrelevant. Adrian placed the marriage registry on the table. Rowan read the first line. His face changed. You married before our arrival. Yes, Elena said. Without council consent? Yes. This marriage can be annulled. The chaplain stepped forward. Not under military covenant law. One of the judges examined the seal. He is correct. Rowan turned sharply. Explain. The judge spoke carefully. During active command, a military marriage witnessed by ranking officers and sealed by an army chaplain cannot be dissolved by civil order unless both spouses agree. Every eye turned toward Elena. She took Adrian's hand. I do not agree. Adrian smiled. Neither do I. Rowan's anger remained controlled. Then you have chosen marriage over command. Elena did not flinch. If those are truly the choices, yes. Adrian turned toward her. She had spent her whole life earning this command. She had nearly started a civil war to protect it. Now she was prepared to surrender it for him. Before Rowan could respond, shouting rose outside. The doors opened. Sergeant Reed entered with a stack of messages. Commander, letters arrived from every northern province. He placed the letters on the table. Governors, border chiefs, merchant councils, and village leaders had all signed the same declaration. If Elena was removed, they would recognize no replacement sent by the capital. Rowan read the first letter, then the second. His confidence began to disappear. Adrian looked at him. You wanted a politically acceptable marriage. He gestured toward the messages. It appears the North accepts it. Rowan's jaw tightened. This is not finished. No, Elena said. She stood beside Adrian, still wearing the ring placed on her finger less than an hour earlier. It is only the beginning. The chancellor gathered the council documents and left. When the doors finally closed, the war hall erupted in cheers. Elena waited until everyone had gone. Then she looked at Adrian. We are married. You sound surprised. I expected more planning. I expected retirement. She glanced at the ring. What happens now? Adrian took her hand. Now we finish stabilizing the North. And after that, the house, the garden, and breakfast from something other than a metal tray. Elena stepped closer. You forgot the wife. Adrian smiled. No, he kissed her forehead. That was the first part secured. A bell rang outside. Not the alarm bell. The arrival bell. Another messenger entered. This one carried the royal seal. The king has summoned Commander Voss and her husband to the capital. Elena opened the letter. Her face hardened. Adrian read the final line over her shoulder. They were not being invited to explain the marriage. They were being ordered to face trial for defying the council. The journey to the capital took 3 days. Adrian expected Elena to spend every hour preparing her defense. Instead, she spent most of the first day staring at the ring on her finger. You keep checking it, he said. I am confirming it is real. You married me in front of 200 soldiers. That does not make it less unexpected. You proposed first. Elena looked toward the carriage window. I wrote one sentence. You ordered me to marry you. I approved your request with conditions. Her lips moved slightly. Adrian leaned closer. Was that a smile? No. Marriage has made you softer. Marriage has made you reckless. He laughed. For a few minutes, the coming trial felt far away. Then the capital walls appeared. Royal guards escorted them directly to the Hall of Judgment. The chamber was already full. Council members sat on one side. Military commanders sat on the other. At the center, King Alaric watched from a raised seat. Lord Chancellor Rowan stepped forward. Commander Elena Voss is charged with refusing a lawful council order, encouraging military disobedience, and entering an unauthorized marriage to preserve her command. Adrian glanced at Elena. She showed no emotion. The king looked at her. How do you answer? I refused a forced marriage. You also allowed your soldiers to reject council authority. I gave them no order. Rowan opened a document. Captain Cole publicly invited them to choose between the council and you. Adrian stepped forward. I invited them to choose whether they would follow a commander they trusted. You are not on trial, Rowan said. Then stop using my actions against my wife. The word wife echoed through the chamber. Elena turned slightly toward him. Even now, hearing it affected her. The king noticed. Captain Cole, he said, why did you marry her? Rowan interrupted. The motive is obvious. He gained influence over the Northern Army. Adrian looked at the king. Then let me surrender every military claim. The room became silent. Elena's expression changed. Adrian, he continued. I want no rank, command, title, or seat on the council. Recorded permanently. Rowan frowned. You would give up your career. I already retired for her. Adrian looked at Elena. For the life I asked for. The king leaned forward. And if Commander Voss loses her position, I remain her husband. If she loses her estates, I still have enough savings for a small house. A few commanders smiled. The king looked toward Elena. And you? If the court orders this marriage dissolved, I refuse. If refusal costs you the Northern Command, Elena did not hesitate. Then appoint someone else. A murmur moved through the hall. Adrian stared at her. She had fought her entire life for that position. Yet her voice remained steady. Rowan seized the moment. She admits she places a private relationship above duty. No, Elena said, I place the right to choose my husband above the council's desire to control my army. Rowan held up the supply records. You accused General Vale of corruption only after he was selected to marry you. Adrian stepped forward. I discovered the records before my retirement request. Convenient. I also brought the witness. The quartermaster entered under guard. He testified that Vale's family had stolen military funds, sold spoiled grain to border units, and ordered him killed when he threatened to expose them. The chamber erupted. Rowan demanded silence. The king did not look at him. He looked at the quartermaster. Can these claims be verified? Yes, Your Majesty. The original ledgers are hidden beneath the Northern Treasury Chapel. The king signaled to a royal officer. Send writers. Rowan's face tightened. This still does not excuse rebellion. No, Adrian said, but it explains why Vale wanted control of the Northern Command. He placed another document before the judges. He planned to replace Elena's quartermasters, control military purchasing, and hide the theft permanently. The king read the document. Then he looked toward Rowan. Did the council investigate Vale before approving the marriage? Rowan hesitated. That was not considered necessary. You ordered my strongest commander to marry a man you did not investigate? No one answered. For the first time, the trial turned. The king rose. Until the financial records are examined, charges against Commander Voss are suspended. Rowan stepped forward. Your Majesty, I am not finished. The hall went silent. Commander Voss will retain temporary command of the North. Elena bowed. Thank you. The king's gaze moved to Adrian. Captain Cole's retirement remains valid. He will hold no military authority. Adrian nodded. That is acceptable. And the marriage? Every person in the chamber waited. The king studied them for a long moment. Then he said, a marriage freely chosen by two adults is not treason. Elena's hand found Adrian's. He closed his fingers around hers. Rowan's defeat was visible. But before they could leave, the king spoke again. There is one condition. Elena turned. The North requires a permanent successor. Within 60 days, Commander Voss must either name one and retire, he paused, or return to the capital alone and serve on the royal council. Adrian felt Elena's hand tighten. The quiet life they had imagined was finally within reach. But accepting it meant surrendering the army she had built. Outside the hall, Elena said nothing. Adrian waited until they were alone. You do not have to choose today. I already know what I should choose. That is not what I asked. She looked at him. What if I regret leaving? Then we find another path. And if you regret marrying someone who still wants command, Adrian touched the ring on her finger. I did not marry a title. Elena's eyes softened. Then what did you marry? The woman beneath it. Before she could answer, a young officer hurried toward them. Commander. Urgent news from the northern border. Elena opened the message. The color left her face. A foreign army had crossed the mountain pass. Peace had lasted less than a month. Adrian read the final line. The 7th Division had already begun retreating. Elena folded the message. Her eyes became ice again. Our trial is over. Adrian looked toward the palace gates. No. He reached for her hand. Our last war has begun. By nightfall, Elena and Adrian were riding north. The king offered them a royal escort. Elena refused. The border cannot wait for ceremony. Adrian rode beside her. You are still technically under trial. The trial is suspended. That is not the same as freedom. She looked ahead, then stay in the capital. He almost laughed. You married me 3 days ago. And you should already know I do not follow sensible advice. For the first time since receiving the message, Elena smiled. It disappeared when they reached the northern pass. The 7th Division had lost 2 forts. Hundreds were wounded. The enemy had crossed through a route believed impossible during winter. Sergeant Reed met them at the command tent. We expected you tomorrow. Elena does not believe in tomorrow, Adrian said. She was already studying the map. Why did the eastern fort fall? The supply gate was open from inside. Adrian and Elena exchanged a look. This was not only an invasion. Someone had helped them. Elena pointed to the narrow valley behind the enemy line. They expect us to defend the main road. Reed nodded. If we don't, they reach the northern towns. They won't. She moved 3 unit markers across the map. We abandon the road at dawn, draw them into the valley, then close both exits. Reed hesitated. That leaves the towns exposed for 6 hours. Adrian understood the risk. If the enemy discovers the trap, they can turn south. Elena looked at him. You disagree? I think someone inside our command is reporting our movements. Reed's face hardened. We checked every officer, then stopped checking officers. Adrian looked at the supply lists. Who knew the mountain gate could be opened? Elena followed his gaze. Quartermasters, engineers, stable masters, and the council delegation. Silence fell. Lord Chancellor Rowan had known every northern defense route. Adrian reached for the message announcing the invasion. The seal was royal. The handwriting was not. This report reached the capital too quickly, he said. Elena's eyes narrowed. The border is 3 days away. Yet the messenger arrived within hours of the crossing. Reed understood. He knew before the attack began. Adrian folded the paper. Rowan arranged it. Elena's expression became colder than Adrian had ever seen. He failed to control the north through marriage, so he invited an invasion. They could expose him later. First, they had to survive. At dawn, Elena ordered the army to retreat. The enemy advanced exactly as planned. Their banners filled the main road. Their cavalry entered the valley. Then the eastern ridge exploded. Adrian had placed old mining charges beneath the pass. Stone collapsed behind the enemy. The 7th Division closed the western exit. Trapped between cliffs, the invading army lost its advantage. But halfway through the battle, a signal flare rose from Elena's command post. Red. The emergency signal. Adrian turned his horse immediately. Elena. He found the command post under attack. A group of soldiers wearing northern uniforms had entered from behind. Traitors. Elena stood in the center, sword drawn, surrounded by fallen guards. One attacker raised a crossbow. Adrian reached her first. The bolt struck his shoulder. Pain tore through him, but he stayed upright long enough to bring the man down. Elena caught Adrian before he fell. Her face changed. Not commander. Not soldier. Wife. No, I'm fine. You have an arrow in your shoulder. I noticed. She lowered him behind the command table and tore open his coat. The bolt had missed his chest barely. Outside, the battle continued. Adrian caught her wrist. You need to lead. I am not leaving you, Elena. No. It was the first time he had heard fear overpower her discipline. He looked at her. If you stay here, thousands die. Her eyes burned. And if I leave, you might. I served you for 7 years. His voice weakened. Trust me for 1 more hour. Elena pressed her forehead against his. You promised a house. I remember. A garden. Yes. And breakfast. Not from a metal tray. Her hand trembled against his face. Do not break that promise. Adrian smiled faintly. Then win quickly. She rose. The ice commander returned. By sunset, the invading army surrendered. The traitors were captured. Among them was Rowan's private secretary. He carried letters proving the chancellor had promised the enemy control of 3 northern provinces in exchange for removing Elena. The war ended before midnight. Adrian woke in the medical tent. Elena sat beside him, still wearing bloodstained armor. You won, he said. We won. You left the battlefield eventually. How long have you been sitting there? She ignored the question. Adrian looked at the bandage around his shoulder. Will I survive? The surgeon says, yes. You sound disappointed. Elena leaned close. If you ever take another arrow protecting me, I will scold you severely. That seems inefficient. Her eyes filled. Adrian stopped smiling. She took his hand and pressed it against her cheek. I thought I had lost you. You didn't. I nearly did. He touched the ring on her finger. But you didn't. 3 days later, they returned to the capital with Rowan's letters. The king read them in silence. The chancellor was arrested before noon. The council withdrew every charge against Elena. Then the king offered her a new title, Supreme Commander of the Royal Armies, the highest military position in the kingdom. Elena stood before the throne. For years, it had been everything she was expected to want. Adrian watched from the side of the hall. The king waited. Do you accept? Elena looked at Adrian, then at the sword at her side. Finally, she removed the commander's insignia from her collar. No, Your Majesty. The hall erupted in whispers. The king looked surprised. You are refusing the highest command in the kingdom. I have served long enough. Her eyes found Adrian again, and I have somewhere else to be. Outside the palace, Adrian held up his retirement request. You copied my idea. I improved it. Reason for retirement? Elena took the pen. She wrote 1 line. To begin the life I nearly lost. Then she handed him the form. Adrian read it and smiled. At the bottom, she had added, approve, but only if my husband comes with me. Smoke rose from Grey Haven. By the time Elena and Adrian reached the village, soldiers had surrounded the square. Families stood outside their homes while officers marked doors for evacuation. At the center waited the temporary northern commander, Lord Cashiner. He wore polished armor without a single scar. So, the famous ice commander returns. Elena Voss, she replied, retired. Then you have no authority here. Elena looked at the crying children behind him. Neither do you. Cashiner held up a royal order. The villages are being cleared for a defensive line. Adrian took the document and read it. This seal is false. Cashiner's expression changed. You cannot prove that. The king's military orders use blue wax. Adrian said, this is black. Sergeant Reed stepped forward. You arrested me because I noticed. Cashiner drew his sword. You are all traitors. The soldiers around him hesitated. Most had once served under Elena. She looked at them. I will give no command. Cashiner smiled. Because they no longer belong to you. No, Elena said, because loyalty chosen freely is stronger than obedience forced by fear. One soldier lowered his weapon, then another. Within moments, every sword pointed toward the ground. Cashiner's face twisted with rage. You would betray your commander? The captain of the guard answered quietly. She was our commander. Cashiner lunged toward Elena. Adrian intercepted him. Their swords struck once, twice. On the third blow, Adrian knocked Cashiner's weapon into the mud. Elena placed the tip of her sword against his throat. You built your command on forged orders. She said, it ends here. By midnight, Cashiner was under arrest. The evacuation stopped. Grey Haven's families returned home. At dawn, a royal messenger arrived with the real order from the king. Cashiner had never been authorized to remove the villagers. He had planned to seize the land after discovering iron beneath the hills. The king restored every dismissed officer and offered Elena her command again. She read the letter beside the village well. Adrian waited. Sergeant Reed waited. Half the 7th Division waited. Elena folded the letter. No. Reed blinked. Commander. I came back because you needed me, she said. Not because I wanted the title. She handed the royal seal to him. The North needs someone who remembers that soldiers protect people, not power. Reed stared at it. You are giving me command. I am recommending you, and if the council refuses. Adrian smiled. They have learned what happens when they ignore her recommendations. The soldiers laughed. 2 weeks later, Adrian and Elena returned south. The cottage roof still leaked. The chickens had escaped again. The garden had become a field of weeds. Elena stood on the porch and examined the damage. This place is indefensible. Adrian carried their bags inside. It survived without us. Barely. The next morning, he climbed onto the roof. Elena stood below holding the ladder. You are placing that tile incorrectly. You have never repaired a roof. I understand structure. You also once organized chickens by rank. It was efficient. Adrian looked down at her. Do you regret it? The chickens? Any of it? She became quiet. The war, the council, the rushed wedding, the life she had surrendered and chosen again. Elena looked toward the garden, then at the silver ring on her finger. No. Adrian climbed down. Not even marrying a retired captain with a damaged house. You are not retired. I submitted the paperwork twice. You led a standoff, exposed 2 corrupt officials, and fought an unlawful commander. As a civilian, that makes it worse. He smiled and took her hand. What happens now? Elena looked around their small home. Now you repair the roof. And after that we plant the garden. And after that, for once she looked uncertain. Then she placed his hand against her stomach. Adrian stopped breathing. Elena. The physician confirmed it before we left Grey Haven. He stared at her. You rode into a military confrontation while pregnant. I did not know until afterward. That is not comforting. Her lips curved. You asked for a family. Emotion struck him so suddenly that he could not speak. He wrapped his arms around her. The ice commander rested her face against his shoulder and allowed herself to be held. Months later, the house changed. A cradle stood beside their bed. Tiny clothes replaced military reports on Elena's desk. The old sword remained above the fireplace, but dust slowly gathered on its sheath. When their daughter was born, Elena held her with the same concentration she once gave battlefield maps. She is very small, she whispered. Adrian sat beside her. She has your eyes. She is frowning. Definitely yours. Elena gave him a tired glare. Then the baby wrapped one small hand around her finger. The commander, who had faced armies without fear, began to cry. Adrian kissed her temple. 7 years earlier, he had promised to follow Elena anywhere. He had imagined that promise meant battlefields. He had been wrong. Sometimes it meant a leaking roof, noisy chickens, an overgrown garden, a child sleeping between them. One evening, Adrian found the old torn retirement request inside a drawer. Elena had written beneath his original reason for leaving. Approved, but you're marrying me. Adrian added one final line. Best order I ever followed. Elena read it over his shoulder. That was not an order. No. She took the pen and wrote beneath his words. It was a request. Adrian turned toward her. And if I had refused? Her eyes narrowed. I would have asked again. He laughed. The ice commander had finally learned to live without war. But she had never learned to surrender. Fortunately, Adrian had never wanted her to. He kissed his wife while their daughter slept nearby, and sunlight spread across the garden they had once only imagined. After 7 years of serving Elena, Adrian had finally retired. Not from her, with her. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.